Okay, Jamey, we'll start with your breakouts. You already talked about Kerryon Johnson. We've talked about Leonard Fournette. So let's talk about a wide receiver quarterback combo here. Jameis Winston, QB 13 right now in ADP, and Chris Godwin, who's going 44th overall, someone you could be looking at in the middle of round 4, hopefully later round 4. Yeah, you love those Bucks, so let's talk about it. Go ahead.
We've talked a lot about Chris Godwin. I just think that this is the year he puts it all together. His third year in the league. He's been sort of building toward this. All the targets that are available with Adam Humphries and Deshaun Jackson gone. He's had a phenomenal camp so far. Scored the touchdown in the preseason game. I think it's only going to continue to, build momentum for him. And then Jameis, I think, is going to be a quarterback riser. I do think that you're going to start to see him, not necessarily be reflected in average draft position, but I would not be surprised if he gets picked over Andrew Luck. Are you there yet, Heath?
I'll put him ahead of Luck, yeah.
So, I think that's for me, it's an easy one right now. It wasn't before, but I think Jameis has the opportunity to be among the league leaders in pass attempts. I think he's going to, have a high volume going into the season. And, if he could limit the turnovers, that's going to be a problem for him. But I do think that he's going to have his best year to date. I like what I saw in the first preseason game on that drive. I think, he's going to thrive with Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich in his ear, especially with Arians and his philosophy of allowing him to make some mistakes and still be successful. So one thing just real quick on Tampa Bay is, we don't, I think, talk about Mike Evans enough in the fact that there's all these targets available. And while Evans himself has said he thinks Chris Godwin's going to be 1 and 1A with him, Evans may be the one guy that's being drafted outside of the top 5 receivers that has a chance to make that leap to being number 1. Because if
talked about that for sure.
If those targets, but I don't think we talk about it enough. If those targets go his direction, because look, I think everybody kind of, we tend to, sometimes we harp on the top of the draft a little too much, and sometimes we just, gloss over it. Evans in round 2 could just be an absolute steal. And so I just think this Tampa Bay offense is poised to be very, very fun, very explosive. The defense is probably going to struggle, so they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. The run game, as we know, is non-existent, at least right now. And so I think there's just a lot to like about this entire passing game, and that's why Jameis, I think, has a chance to thrive. It's not like last year where if he struggled, there was a guy that the coaching staff trusts. Now, they may trust Blaine Gabbert. I don't know. I don't know if I would trust Blaine Gabbert, but I think Jameis is in line to really take that next step forward. And, it's funny because they're going to be tied together their entire careers, Jameis and Mariota, until one separates. Obviously, there's a big difference fantasy-wise, but Mariota's got a guy he's got to look over his shoulder and worry about in Ryan Tannehill. Jameis doesn't have that right now, and I think this is going to allow him the freedom to play like I think we've hoped to see him play over the last couple of seasons.
Okay. So Jameis, he made 9 starts. His 16-game pace based on those 9 starts was 4,700 yards, 28 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, plus 76 carries for 459 and 2. He ran the ball a little bit more last year. Those fantasy points, because of the interceptions, he would have been 12th in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues, 13th in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. That's really not so bad for Jameis Winston. Okay, Godwin. I'm going to give you Godwin or Golladay. I think I gave that yesterday, but since Golladay is a breakout for Heath, who would you guys rather have, Godwin or Golladay?
Golladay.
I like Godwin better.
Okay, they're going to go similarly. Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel's obviously a breakout for you. We've talked about him. He was one of only 2 wide receivers last year with 2 rushing touchdowns. Do you know who the other one was?
No.
He was, I'll give you a hint, he was wide receiver eligible, but not necessarily a wide receiver. Isaiah McKenzie of Bills. So actually, DJ Moore had the second most rushing yards of any wide receiver, and Curtis Samuel was one of only 2 receivers with 2 rushing touchdowns. But Samuel, Jamey, in our Facebook group, on Fantasy Football Today, the Facebook group, somebody made a pretty good comparison about, I said, I can't remember the last time somebody got this much preseason hype. Here he is, Robert Thomas. I feel like the 2019 Curtis Samuel hype and rise in ADP is equal to the 2018 Marquise Goodwin hype and rise. And I thought that was a pretty good comparison. But don't call Goodwin a failure. He didn't really get a chance to show it because he got hurt in week 1 and Garoppolo got hurt in week 3. But I did think that was an interesting comparison.
Yeah, and Godwin had all those off the field situations with his family. So
Goodwin.
What did I say? Godwin? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said Godwin.
Goodwin, yes. I I guess, yeah, you could make a comparison to that, but I don't think he was getting the hype from the media
Yeah.
in his city. Like Goodwin was getting hyped up by the fantasy community.
Yeah, I just thought it was
But
it
the
was a fun
similarities are there.
story.
You know, strong finish the year before. You know, and the hope that it would carry over to the following season, and it didn't.
And Jamey gave me one more breakout when I asked him via email, and he just said Hunter. So is that Torrey Hunter, 5-time All-Star,
He was
breakout
great.
season?
He was great. I think he played fantasy football too, if I'm not mistaken.
Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry's got a shot. I think it's funny. He's gonna go as the sixth guy of the top 6 tight ends, and we obviously focus on the top 3 and the other 2 guys in Ingram and Howard, and Henry is like, you just kind of, okay, I'll take Henry if he's there. He's got a shot to, maybe be better than Ingram, but be better than O.J. Howard and challenge the other 2 guys if there's a step back for either Ertz or the other 3 guys if there's a step back for any of those 3. So, there's 110 targets available with Tyrell Williams and Antonio Gates gone. You know what Rivers to Gates has been for years. So the touchdowns, I think, are the thing that could certainly help Hunter Henry. But if he can, you see the projections here if you're watching on the show, it's 57, 7, 37, and 5. I would take the over on that.
Yeah, figuring out how you feel about Hunter Henry could really shape your draft. If you're comfortable with him at tight end, you can wait an extra round and not take Ingram and Howard. And, if you're not, then you might feel a little bit more compelled to take one of the top 5. Heath, how do you feel about Hunter Henry?
Oh, I like him a lot, and I think you could make a case for him over at least one of my breakouts at tight end. I thought he looked pretty good in his first preseason game. The Chargers, there's been a lot of buzz there. I think it's difficult to like Hunter Henry as a breakout and Mike Williams as a breakout, and I'm more on the Hunter Henry as a breakout than Williams.
I totally agree with you. I think that's where Mike Williams loses. If he doesn't gain in the catches and the yards, the clear loss for him is the touchdowns, with Henry taking not all of it, obviously, but if you were to say who's going to score 5 touchdowns, who's going to score 10 of the 2 guys, I would sign up for Henry more so than I would for Williams.
All right, guys, one last break on fantasy football today. Heath's breakouts, listener emails right after this. Yeah, the Heath is on. All right, who are your breakouts, Heath? Who are some that you want to talk about?
I did put Lamar Jackson in here partially because I was kind of saying that I didn't have another quarterback breakout because Jamey took Jameis Winston. I agree with him. I don't really view Wentz as a breakout just because Wentz did it before. He just got hurt in the middle of that breakout season. But he did everything. Like, he was a top 5 quarterback. I've got him ranked 4th. I think I'm the highest on him in the rankings right now. I think he's going to be very good. But I'll go with Jackson just because a lot of times we distinguish between sleeper and breakout and say, well, yeah, he's a sleeper because he's being drafted so late. He's a breakout if he has top 5 upside. I do think Lamar Jackson is both. I have him projected, I think, pretty cautiously with just 159 rush attempts, with only throwing 21 touchdown passes and 3,300 passing yards. And even with that, he's creeping into my top 12, top 10 quarterbacks in 6-point per pass touchdown leagues. He's a borderline top 5 guy in 4-point per pass touchdown leagues. Loved what I saw in the first preseason game. Love what they've done with this offense for him. I think Miles Boykin and hopefully Marquise Brown gets on the field and help too. I think those receivers will definitely help. Mostly it's just his development. If he becomes an average NFL quarterback in terms of passing ability, then he is going to be a fantasy superstar.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I can't do with Jackson, unless I'm in a league where, only 15, 16 quarterbacks are drafted, I don't think I could draft him as my only quarterback. I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable with that.
I just have a really hard, and it's possible. Maybe they beat these teams so badly that they don't have to pass and they don't run Jackson. But they start off with the Dolphins, the Arizona Cardinals, the Kansas City Chiefs. I find it really hard to imagine that Lamar Jackson's going to be bad in those 3 games.
I hope not. If he is, sound the alarm. All right, Dalvin Cook we discussed. Let's talk about DJ Moore because you have him as a breakout, and his last 7 games, he was on pace for 73 catches, 1,077 yards, only 2 touchdowns, but 117 targets. He certainly showed up late in the season. DJ Moore.
Yes, and I did a little Twitter thread on this yesterday at Heath Cummings SR if you want to go read it, talking about Moore and Samuel. And I'm not trying to stand in the way of a Curtis Samuel breakout, except for the fact that I've started to see a few people on Twitter saying Samuel over Moore, and I've heard of a few drafts where Samuel is going before Moore. And I just think it's important to look at what they actually did last year. Yes, Curtis Samuel scored 7 touchdowns to DJ Moore's 2. Let's get rid of that for just a second. Moore was a 21-year-old rookie who averaged 9.6 yards per target on 82 targets. There have been 3 21-year-old rookies ever to average better than 9 yards per target on 80 targets. The 3 are DJ Moore, Randy Moss, and Keenan Allen. Juju almost did it. He had 79 targets. We can throw Juju in there as well. He was better than Samuel on a per-target basis, a per-reception basis, a per-game basis, and he was a rookie. So I still think while Samuel definitely is a value at his current ADP as it creeps up, Moore is the one that we could be looking at as a top 12 wide receiver moving into next year.
And I don't disagree with Heath. I don't know if he'll be a top 12 guy, but I don't disagree that he should be taken ahead of Curtis Samuel. As much as I like Curtis Samuel and I've consistently had DJ Moore ranked ahead of him. So I don't want to be the one that's, saying take Curtis Samuel over DJ Moore, and I'll stay consistent. I think if you say who has the higher ceiling, it's DJ Moore. That doesn't mean that Samuel can't be better than him by the end of the year based on circumstances. But I still think that if you're looking at it, who should you be taking first? It's DJ Moore. Now, the problem is that the gap between them is ridiculous.
The depends on which draft you're in, yeah.
The gap should be a lot closer between those two guys.
In our drafts, it's now down to like a half a round.
And Heath, you have 2 tight ends on your breakout list. They are O.J. Howard and Evan Ingram. And who do you prefer?
I prefer Ingram just because, but I don't want to sell O.J. Howard short. He's better than Evan Ingram. The difference is currently I've got Ingram projected for about 110 targets. I've got Howard closer to 80. If you give O.J. Howard 90 targets, which is still a pretty low total, he is the easy number 4 tight end. If he gets 100, he's creeping into the top 3 in his career efficiency. So both of these guys have a chance. We could very easily next year be talking about tight end, and instead of saying big 3, we're saying big 6. Howard, Ingram, and Henry could all join that group.
I think we should be saying it now.
Yeah, I had a fear about Evan Ingram that I think has sort of gone away. Just Daniel Jones looked great, and I'm not saying he will be great, but if he takes over for Eli Manning, I don't think he'll be completely terrible. So and I think he will at some point take over for Eli Manning. But also, like there's got to be a bump for Ingram, even though it's only 4 games. It's not going to help you in the playoffs. Just overall season statistics, without Golden Tate, those first 4 games, like he could just be a beast. His 16-game pace in the games he's played without Odell Beckham in his career, 77 catches, 962 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That's really good. That only would have been tight end 5 last year, but it would have been top 2 in 2016, number 3 in 2017. And he's only getting better, he's coming into his own. So no Tate for 4 games is great. The fact that Daniel Jones looks like he could be a good quarterback, not necessarily this year, but he won't be terrible, has really kind of taken some of my fears away for Ingram. So did I ask who you said you like Ingram more because you think he'll get more targets?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Listener breakouts. Spencer says, I'm calling for a re-breakout for Allen Robinson, top 15 receiver.
I don't hate it.
I'd be surprised.
I'd be surprised too. I kind of hate it. Like, sorry.
I don't want to make the argument, but do you want me to make the argument for him?
Yeah, actually, because I find it hard to make an argument for any Bears pass catcher based on last year. They just spread the ball around so much.
That's absolutely true, but it's also true that Robinson had a 2 or 3 week absence. He had the week that he got hurt, which he only had 4 receiving yards. So really, you're looking at a 12-game season where he caught 55 passes for 754 yards. That's not too far from a 1,000-yard pace. I wouldn't be all that surprised if he catches 75 passes this year for 1,050 yards. And then it just comes down to, does he score 6 touchdowns or 8? That could be the difference between him being a top 15 wide receiver.
Okay. David Lee, one of our Twitter followers, former Nick, but not really, says Mike Williams is a breakout this year. Mike Williams, I think you guys favor Hunter Henry in that regard.
Nope.
Yeah, it's just it's hard to expect him to, replicate that type. I think he's a fine number 3 receiver because I think he can still score 7 touchdowns, but the catches and the yards really have to come up.
5 games more than 4 targets. 5 games of more than 4 targets for Mike Williams. He averaged 19.2 fantasy points per game in PPR, which is unbelievable. And he's kind of an X factor because I don't know that we know how good he is yet. Would you agree?
Yep.
Right?
I do agree.
We don't know. Tyler says, just talk about Zay Jones for 5 minutes.
That's way too many minutes to talk about Zay Jones.
5 seconds.
I think he's the number 3 wide receiver in Buffalo.
Okay, that suffices. D says Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones. That's a good call. I mean, could certainly happen.
We can talk about that tomorrow with Ben.
Okay. Well, tomorrow's a bus show. I don't think Ben's gonna bring up.
Like I said.
George Kritikos, who's a friend of ours on Dynasty League Football, says Tom Brady. I have a feeling he finally lives up to the hype. Yeah, Dynasty League, you got 4 more years of Tom Brady or something like that. So, Mike says Marlon Mack is a breakout. Does Marlon Mack have top 5 potential?
Yes.
I have a hard time seeing it unless his role in the passing game really expands.
All right, and let's read some. We'll do a couple more. Joe says Nick Chubb as a breakout.
Winner.
I love Nick Chubb, but we'll see what we'll see what happens. First 8 games, he's going to be a breakout. And Sony Michel will be a monster from BP. Sony Michel will be a monster, all caps.
He stays healthy, it could happen.
I do like that one just because, it's a Patriots running back, and who knows, it might happen. I'm not betting on it.